Welcome back to Virteva's Let's Talk podcast. It's December 2025, and this month we're going to be recapping some of the biggest announcements made at Microsoft Ignite last month. So I had a great time in San Francisco visiting not only with colleagues, but also getting a chance to sit down and kind of talk to some of our different customers, also meet some fans of the podcast I talked to out on the floor, and also had an opportunity to kind of sit down and kind of talk Copilot with different users, from system administrators to trainers to Microsoft employees, and just kind of go through kind of the overall value statement and kind of better hone in on some of the capabilities, and in some cases even kind of get to give my own unique take from a training and enablement standpoint on how you can take advantage of the Copilot features that are there today. But for the purpose of today's podcast, what I really wanted to kind of do is sit down and kind of go through the overall book of news that Microsoft provided and kind of share my highlights. So before I get too far into the podcast here today, if there is anything that you want to learn specifically about what was announced at Ignite or dig even deeper into the details, you certainly can by going to news.microsoft.com. They have an Ignite 2025 book of news kind of blog post out there that is very extensive. It goes kind of through everything that they talked through throughout the entire show conference in more detail. And as you kind of go through that, you'll find helpful links to blogs, keynotes, different sessions that were hosted, that were shared. And you'll really get to learn quite a bit more that I'm going to talk about here over the next 30 to 40 minutes or so. So really quick, just wanted to kind of start the podcast and let you know where I'm pulling all the news from. And from there, we're really going to start to dip in and kind of talk about the biggest announcements. And the biggest two announcements that I really want to spend time on today before we start to dip more and more into agents is going to be Microsoft Agent 365, which we probably spoiled a little bit on the podcast if you're a regular listener. And what Agent 365 is it is kind of an extension of existing infrastructure that already exists in the Microsoft 365 Admin Center. And it's designed to help your team, so your IT administrators, as well as your IT leaders, manage and secure different AI agents that are being introduced or may have already been introduced into the environment. So this is available today in the Admin Center if you're a Frontier Early Access Program member, and we'll talk a little bit more about that as we kind of talk about some of the Copilot agents and some of those new Frontier agents that are being introduced. But if you're in the Frontier program, you already have access to this. Again, what this does is it brings together kind of your security tools, including Defender, Entra, Purview, alongside different things like your workplace productivity apps such as Word, Outlook, Excel. It ties all these core features together into kind of what Microsoft calls a robust registry to help you track agents, their access controls, gives you real-time visualizations of what agents are doing, the operability and the interoperability that may be plugged into business workflows that are in your environment. And it really kind of helps you tie all that together and streamline governance and protection for agents. Microsoft's big aim here is to kind of help you accelerate agent adoption while also having kind of control over that. So what we're going to take a look at real quickly is just kind of the blog article that they put out on this. And it's really just kind of a high level introduction of what Microsoft Agent 365 is, for basically what I just kind of talked about, and then give you some kind of preview screenshots in there. So as you can kind of see, I'm playing just kind of a quick video about what AI agents are, how you move faster. And this kind of really is just talking about agents within Microsoft 365. It's not really necessarily showing you what they do. It's just kind of that bells and whistles, hey, check it out video. But this is if you're following along on the YouTube page, this is kind of that new operability interface that's directly built into the admin center. And it gives you the ability to kind of have a better idea of what agents are in your environment, what's been allowed, where there may be kind of like some shadow AI agents built in, where you might be having agent sprawl. If you already have Microsoft 365 Copilot today, or you have trials on for Copilot Studio, you may be surprised to find out how many agents exist in your environment and are accessible that have been shared with employees. So if you're an IT admin, I think that this is a great spot to check out. Again, These things previously existed on the back end. You had the ability to check out some of the stuff in the admin center. You could see some of the stuff in the Teams admin center. You could see it in DSPM for AI as well. And it really, what this is doing is it's very similar to DSPM for AI. Is again, that was a suite that was introduced that already existed in a number of different spots, and it kind of gives you a single pane of glass to find those things, check them out, and kind of understand what's going on with them. Microsoft is introducing this because they're trying to make it easier and more effective for your agents, or not your agents, but rather your IT admins, to manage and secure all of that with confidence. And again, Microsoft's big push here is to kind of give you more visibility into where those agents are, what platforms they're being used on, how active they are. And this sits directly below the Copilot area in the Microsoft 365 Admin Center to kind of give you the ability to see what's going on here and control that stuff. Again, this is Frontier, so you may not see this today, but over time, or if you decide that you want to opt into that Frontier program experience, is you'll give yourself the ability to kind of go in here and just see all this stuff in one spot without having to dip around into 3 or 4 different areas. And again, the advantage here is it's showing you all your agents in one spot. It's giving you the ability to control their access directly in that one panel of glass rather than have to jump around to the Teams admin center and kind of go into that old plugins, now the agents area, to kind of apply a policy to them. Gives you the ability to kind of visualize. This is a great screenshot or video here that Microsoft's put together of looking at the agents, what they're connected to, kind of a hub and spoke model of, hey, you've got an agent. These are all the different side agents or different plugins or different APIs that it's talking to, just to kind of give your security team and your IT admins a better idea of how agents are being used. And then from an interoperability standpoint, if you're using things such as SharePoint or Dynamics or Teams, is it's giving you more visibility into how those agents are being used within your own Microsoft 365 ecosystem. And I touched on security here too as well. So this is something that's going to be available right at that kind of front page, but it's also going to be plugged into Defender as well. So if you go into Defender and then you end up going to assets and agents, is you'll be able to see all your agents in here in the future as well. These are, and I should probably have prefaced this, again, it's Frontier program. By the time that this actually gets to general availability, I would think that we're probably going to be somewhere between the March 2026 and the June 2026 timeframe. It was actually right before we kind of headed into Ignite, taking a look at the roadmap, and there was a lot of roadmap items out there that kind of got announced or added to the roadmap back in September. And I watched a lot of those get kind of pushed into Q1 2026. So no real big surprise there if you follow the roadmap or you've listened to the show before. But I do think that this is an interesting and a useful concept that Microsoft is pushing out here with this Agent 365 ecosystem and just kind of that single pane of glass to be able to manage your agents. But out of all the announcements that came out of Ignite, this was, I think, the very first one that came out. And I think that this is going to be one of the most useful ones once it actually gets over to kind of general availability. If you're in the Frontier program today, I implore you, make sure that you are leaving feedback in providing that to Microsoft so that they can make improvements over this over time, so that when it does hit general availability or even after general availability, we continue to kind of see it improve. One of the biggest kind of complaints that I've heard about kind of the Copilot pane of glass in the admin center is, while yes, it's helpful to kind of see some of that stuff there, it is not always as in depth as we would like it to be, especially for smaller organizations. All right. So the next thing that I wanted to cover, and this is probably the biggest piece of news for me, at least, and I kind of saw this coming at some point. We talked about it on the show, both myself and Chris and Holly, and we've been talking about it internally for a while, is that adopting Security Copilot is a extremely cumbersome process at the moment, is because of the way that Security Copilot is detached from Microsoft 365 Copilot, and also some of the license model choices on it, where it's using security compute units and it's going through kind of Azure and consumption-based licensing, is I think it's become a pain for organizations to adopt. Those that don't want to go into a pay as you go model, just, they don't even look at it. I hear a lot of chatter about how people want to be able to use it with their Microsoft 365 Copilot license, but I don't necessarily know if that was ever reasonable from Microsoft's standpoint. Like, this either made sense as another standalone license, or kind of a, hey, give us the ability to kind of dip our toe into the water with our existing licensing, and then let us, let's try it out, see what it's like, see how fast we're consuming units using this tool. And that is kind of exactly what Microsoft did here. So one of their biggest announcements of the show, and I think this was the second announcement of the show or a third announcement of the show, is that Microsoft Security Copilot is being added to all Microsoft 365 E5 license holders. Now, there is a giant asterisk on this, and you can actually even see they put an asterisk right in there, because this isn't just you have Microsoft 365 E5 security. It has some strings attached to it. And I want to clarify too, and I haven't had a large amount of time to really dig super deep on this. I am not sure if this is E5 security as an add-on. So if you have like a business premium license plus E5 security, do you now get Security Copilot? I don't think that is going to be the case. I think that this is being added to Microsoft 365 E5, and it's kind of called out there that you have to have kind of that premium tier license, which is the $57 per user per month if you're in the US, or roughly thereabouts. And then you're getting access to Security Copilot. Now, the asterisk on this is, and they kind of hid this again within the news article. So one again, so they're saying no additional cost. It's going to give you access to Security Copilot, all the new Security Copilot agents out there, which I believe there's 20 plus agents out there that exist now that tie across Entra, Intune, Purview, Defender, and allow you to take advantage of different capabilities rather than having kind of that one size fits all agent that was originally released with Security Copilot. But the catch here is that while you're getting access to Security Copilot with those, so here they're saying that there's 37 Security Copilot agents already available, and they're introducing 40 more. No date on when those are all being introduced, but yeah, they are adding more agents in here. But the big piece of that is this is still consumption based. So you're getting access to Security Copilot with a limited number of consumption units attached to your E5s. The consumption units, or the limited number of units that you're having rather that are attached, are tied to the number of licensed users that you have within the organization. And I pulled up a Microsoft Learn article on this here because I wanted you to be able to kind of see it as we went through it on the YouTube page. And I'm going to include all these links in the show notes, as I always do, because there's a lot of different topics that we're going over today. The big catches here is, so if you kind of scroll down in this Learn article, is one, you'll see the rollout information. So the rollout is starting on November 18th. So that was right around the time that Ignite was happening. And that rollout is happening slowly, likely over a 90 to 180 day period. So if you have an E5 license or a Microsoft 365 E5 license, you may already have access to this today. If you have it, you also may not have access to it today, and you may not have access to it still for a few months yet. But they are starting to roll this stuff out in November over the next several months. But here is kind of the licensing capacity piece that I really wanted to talk to. And I've already kind of had to kind of talk to our own team internally about it, who's excited about this, is customers with a Microsoft 365 E5 will have access to 400 security compute units each month for every 1,000 paid users, up to 10,000 security compute units. So if you're an organization that only has 400 employees, you don't have 1,000, obviously. So you don't have 1,000 licenses, you have 400. The compute units you're being given are going to scale back. So if you have 4,000 users in your environment, you're going to have 1,600 security compute units. If you have 400 users in your environment, you're going to have to, and it's, when I say users, I mean licensed E5 users, you're going to have access to 160 security compute units. Now, we've talked about this on the show before, probably about a year ago, that the way that those security compute units are eaten are kind of like lawyer's hours. So if you give access to someone on your team, Security Copilot, you give them access to play around with this tool to help them with security investigations or kind of looking for identified signals that are happening in Entra or Defender to kind of help speed them up and move them along, as you would with a normal Microsoft 365 agent, is it's not a per message cost like it is with kind of Copilot Studio, where, if you're using generative messages or if you're using API calls or graph messages, is you're kind of being billed at a certain kind of cost per message. Here you're being billed by the amount of time that that security compute unit is doing something on the back end. So when I say lawyer's hours, what I kind of mean here is, so if I ask it, hey, can you identify any Windows 10 devices that are still existing in the environment? Because I don't want to go to Intune. I don't want to pull a report on that. I just want Security Copilot to tell me what are the Microsoft Windows 10 devices that are out in the environment that are out of support. Security Copilot's going to go out there. It's going to try and understand that. But as it's kind of doing that math, is there are calculations that are happening behind the scenes on that security compute unit that your question and your answer may come back within 30 seconds, 60 seconds, 90 seconds. But the amount of effort that actually went in behind the scenes on getting that answer for you, it might not be 90 seconds. It might be 15 minutes, 30 minutes worth of security compute went into kind of figuring out what that task was and how to answer it. And if you're doing something 15 minutes, does that bill you for an entire hour? Does 30 minutes bill you for an hour? That stuff is, it's in a gray area. And this is where that kind of the lawyer kind of hours kind of comes into play, is doing a single query in there. And they give some examples of this here. Is they do some basic kind of consumption math here for you. And basically they make the assumption that an enterprise company has 5 security compute units for each hour under the current billing model. Within a 2-hour period, the customer is going to run 2 different scenarios. So they're going to do a prompt that's going to use 3 security compute units over 40 seconds in an hour. And then they're going to do an incident summarization, which is kind of very similar to that you would do with the Microsoft 365 Copilot. That's going to use half of a security compute unit over 10 seconds in an hour. So just running those 2 different things is you're going to see total usage of 3.5 security compute units over 2 hours. Because billing is based on provisioned capacity, the customer is being charged for 5 security compute units every hour, resulting in 10 security compute units billed for the 2 hours. So using that model, which provides 400 security compute units per 1,000 users license, there's no hourly provision capacity. Instead, those same 2 scenarios will deduct 3.5 security compute units from the monthly SCU allocation. So if your brain is a little bit rattled by that, this is the Microsoft calculus on it. And this is why I say, if you have a Microsoft 365 Security Copilot or a Microsoft 365 E5 license and you're granted these security compute units to play around with, test it out. Take a look at your consumption on the back end as you're doing computes or as you're doing prompts. Jot that stuff down in an Excel sheet, in a Microsoft list, pad and paper, however you're doing it, and try and better understand how quickly you're eating through your compute units. Because as you run out of compute units, you're not going to be able to use them anymore. And then that's the point where it's going to kind of switch over to pay-as-you-go licensing. Now, the question on this, and I'm not sure if this is actually answered in this article, is, and it is right here. So what happens if a customer exceeds the included security compute unit? So if you go above your allocated CUs, you're going to get throttled at a future date. Is that future date the next day? Is it the next month? Unknown, based on kind of how this is written up here. But customers will have the ability to scale beyond the amount that they get each day by, enabling that pay-as-you-go licensing. And that's where this can get dangerous. And this is the same thing that we've talked about with Copilot Studio, is with the pay-as-you-go pricing, even for agent chat, is if you're not keeping a close eyeball on this, is it can get out of control and it can kind of become an unexpected bill. So I think that what you're most likely going to want to do with this is play around with it and see if you can kind of understand how you're going to be billed on it, how much you're consuming. And then if you decide that you actually want to add pay to go licensing to it, tie that pay as you go licensing to a threshold so that you can't go over it and kind of start to go really deep into the red when you're not expecting it. So I think that this is going to probably evolve, and there'll be more news that comes out on this over time, both from partners and different folks that are using it in the field. We'll be able to talk about this more on the podcast, but this is a really tricky subject to talk about because we internally at Virteva don't use Security Copilot yet. We do have the E5 licenses. We are going to have this made available to us, but until we've had an opportunity to really kind of sit down with it and understand that core experience and the pay-as-you-go experience with it, it's hard for us to kind of give you prescriptive advice of, yeah, just go all in on this or completely hold off. And for right now, I think that you kind of want to sit in the middle. You want to, be very tentative. Don't go out there and give it to every single one of your security agents. Maybe give it to a security supervisor, maybe give it to a team lead, let them play with it. And then again, jot down what you're doing with it so you better understand how you're using those allocated hours. All right, so now that we've kind of gone through the insane math and calculus that is the Security Copilot add-on, I wanted to talk a little bit more about some of the Copilot agents and frontier firm pieces that are coming, some of which we've talked about already on the show and other pieces that were announced at Ignite. So more frontier firm agents. Microsoft is introducing 3 new frontier firm agents, specifically Workforce Insights, People, and learning agents. All of these things are going to be powered by Work IQ, and Work IQ is something that was first started kind of getting talked about at Ignite. Previously, we had talked a little bit about kind of context IQ, which is kind of that / command that you use when you are kind of using Microsoft 365 Copilot. What Work IQ is it is, as Microsoft puts it, the new intelligent layer powering Microsoft 365 Copilot and its agents. Let's go a little bit more depth into kind of the new agents that were announced. We'll talk a little bit more about a couple of the ones that snuck in kind of right before Ignite that we talked a little bit back in the September and the October podcast. And then we'll also talk about things that are coming next and kind of availability windows. So the Workforce Insights agent. This agent is kind of give your leaders and delegates more real-time comprehensive views of their organization across roles, tenure, location, and then other attributes to help kind of support faster decision making, a data-driven workforce, all that jazz. And this is really something new that's kind of coming in that's going to act as just kind of an extension of what existed there today. There's not really a whole lot in terms of kind of visuals that I have to show off on this one, but this was kind of the first agent that they announced. And what this is really kind of trying to give you a better idea of is, what is your workforce doing? It's not, I feel like it's not a big brother thing. It almost kind of feels like an extension of what Copilot Studio can do for you today and what Copilot Analytics can do for you today, but more in kind of an agentic form. So you kind of have a conversation with it. You can ask questions to it, and then it can kind of spit some of that detail back out to you. The next agent is the People agent, and this is meant to help users find people in the organization based on role, function, skill, and offer tailored suggestions on how to connect with colleagues based on interactions. So we talked about people skills earlier in the year. There still is some setup that has to happen behind the scenes on this. As an employee, you can kind of go in and fill out your skills, but behind the scenes, you still do have to go in and, set up kind of some of those workforce or people skills in your admin center. So you're going to want to sit down. I'm actually booking off some time later this month or early next to sit down with our admins and get this set up internally. So as we get this developed a little bit more internally, my plan is to show off a little bit more from a demo context, how you can kind of take advantage of that. And the last new agent that they talked about was the learning agent. And the purpose of this agent is to kind of deliver personalized micro learning experiences. Again, Microsoft speak here. That's going to offer kind of tailored tips and curated courses to kind of help your employees build knowledge around specific roles, AI skills. There'll be content sources that you can configure to kind of meet with your team's goals. And Microsoft says that together, this agent, along with all the agents, are really going to help simplify workforce management, strengthen connections, and accelerate upskilling across the organization. So these are agents that are primarily built, to help kind of keep track of how your organization is using AI and giving you some more intelligence around kind of the workforce IQ in your environment. So I talked a little bit about kind of the Frontier program earlier in the episode. And I've talked about it just now with these new agents. And again, these are agents that if you're in the Frontier program, they are available to you today. If you are not in the Frontier program, this could be a March 2026 thing. This might even end up extending out into, later in the year, as we've seen in previous years. So I wanted to offer a little bit of clarification around what the Frontier program is and kind of how you can kind of wrap your head around how that early access works, since it's a bit confusing. So Microsoft has kind of shifted with Copilot to a slightly modified version of its release schedule. So Frontier program is really meant to be early access to Copilot products, and that's opt-in. Previously, what you had is you had your previews and your private previews, again, opt-in, and then targeted release before it hit general availability. So again, this has been kind of a headache even for us as a partner. But as they've added this layer of early access with the Frontier program, you're kind of beta testing when you're in the Frontier program, just like you were in preview or private preview or even targeted release. If you opt into that stuff, this isn't generally available to you yet. This is opt in. This is provide feedback to Microsoft. This is improve the product before it gets released to the general public under that GA release schedule. I think that there is a lot of I think that there's a lot of value in opting into Frontier. We opt into Frontier here internally. We've done it for most things, except for I think we haven't done it for the Anthropic models yet, just due to there is a risk of whatever you send from Copilot to Claude is you have to sign off on another enterprise agreement with Anthropic. You don't know what's happening with your data when it kind of leaves and goes across that bridge outside of kind of like your data boundary. And then we haven't played too much around with the SharePoint agent. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit kind of towards the back end of the show. But the Frontier program has its benefits, and it has some detriments to it as well. As features change, I was really excited about Copilot Actions. I got it announced at Ignite earlier last year, and we saw kind of start to roll out. You could do some pretty cool stuff with it, and then I don't want to say they scrapped it, but they pulled back on it earlier in the year. They removed it for a few months. They brought it back, and it is kind of a shell of what it was. And what we're seeing there is they took some of the actions pieces of it and they moved it into kind of the new Copilot workforce agent and the new kind of Copilot app builder agent. And then they took some of the scheduling automation behind it and they moved that into kind of the workflow agent that existed in Teams previously. So if you want to follow up on a message or you want to have Copilot automatically do something for you, great. There's an app for that. It's called, well, no longer called Copilot Actions. It is called Copilot Scheduled Messages. And then if you want to have it build an app for you, there's the Copilot app builder. If you want to have it build a workflow for you, there is the workflow agent. Now, again, those are Frontier agents. I've used them internally. I've spoken to some people internally. We've talked about them on our recent office hours at Virteva, kind of going through new product updates and initiatives that Microsoft's rolling out. And I will say that all three of those that I just talked about, while they're Frontier, especially with the workflows and app builder, they're very bare bones at the moment and they feel like they're still being developed. So I just want to make sure that you're kind of you have a better understanding of what Frontier is and why there is a Frontier version of this. It's beta testing. And the other piece that I wanted to make sure that you're aware of as well is outside of that beta layer is what you test may not be what is actually released. So make sure that you're giving feedback if you do decide to opt into that. Again, I will provide show notes and links on that stuff just so you can kind of get a little bit of a better idea what's going on with it. Last kind of big piece that I wanted to talk about here from an agent's perspective is these new Microsoft 365 Copilot agent modes in Edge mode that's starting to roll out. Is agent mode in Excel is going to be able to start taking advantage of Anthropic and OpenAI reasoning models, currently only available in the web. Same thing with agent mode in Word, where it can kind of help you write documents by just prompting and telling it what you want it to write. They're also going to start rolling out PowerPoint in the Frontier program. So for those of you that are watching, I'm kind of clicking through a video here real quick that kind of will give you a better idea of what you can do with some of these agents. There are interactive demos that you can kind of go through on this blog post that, again, will be shared in the show notes for both PowerPoint agent, Excel agent, that will let you kind of click through and better understand what you can do with them. So Excel mode or agent mode in Excel will help you kind of quickly build spreadsheets once you turn on that agent mode. And again, it's all done kind of with real world, real text prompting. The power of your prompt is really going to be what determines on how powerful your output is here. I'd suggest playing with it. I've demoed it for a couple of customers, and I think that it has some niche use cases that could be helpful. Previously, Copilot could really just kind of look at what you had in Excel and kind of give you some analysis on it. But this is going to allow you to kind of actually build out different workbooks just by using, conversational AI. With PowerPoint, the agent doesn't quite exist in PowerPoint yet. Instead, you have to go over to Microsoft 365 Copilot. You have to bring up PowerPoint's agent in the Frontier mode. And from here, you'll be able to kind of have conversations about it, tell it what you want it to build. This is the slide deck that you're looking for. And then it can kind of go through and build out a PowerPoint presentation for you. But this will give you the ability to kind of just quickly build a PowerPoint presentation, and then go in and do the rest of the work on it. So I think the Anthropic model is going to help with this because it does a little bit better in terms of kind of creating visual-based content, which I think has been a weakness of PowerPoint to date in Copilot functionality. But I haven't gotten a chance to test this yet because it was just released a couple of weeks ago, and I haven't actually seen the agent show up in the store yet. But we'll be playing around with this, and this is something that I'll dive into in 2026. Another thing that was introduced here, actually three other things just to kind of highlight real quick in terms of agents and Microsoft 365 Copilot is Microsoft is really trying to push Copilot voice. So both with the mobile app and inside of the Copilot app, the Microsoft 365 Copilot app and the desktop app, is you're going to get the ability to kind of come in and actually interact with Copilot just by talking to it. So instead of having to sit down and type, and I was actually when I was at a presentation at a kind of a breakout session, as I had the opportunity to sit down with probably 6, 7, 8 different people, including a Microsoft rep, and kind of give some real world examples of how I prompt Copilot by using my voice and kind of taking pauses and having conversations and thinking about what I'm going to say before I type it. This is an excellent opportunity for conversational AI where you don't have to type everything out and be precise. Some of us talk faster than we type, and that can certainly help you in building out stronger prompts. So some things that Microsoft recommends trying is summarize and reply, schedule a meeting for you. Hey, Copilot, can you look at these things on my calendar, these files that I was working on? Can you give me a summary of that? Or just, can you give me some of your unique insights based on all of your knowledge within the organization and all of the web data or third-party data that you're connected to? So instead of, again, typing it, you just kind of have a conversation with it. Copilot chat is also going to be expanding. So we talked about this a couple of months ago on the show about how it kind of came out of nowhere, is that they were starting to offer some more functionality to non-licensed users. In early 2026, I guess they're saying by March, is they're going to be extending even more capabilities at no additional cost to those Copilot chat users. It sounds like initially this is going to be Outlook, is that they're going to allow you to do more with Outlook in terms of summarization and writing emails that's not quite there today. The chat panel is there today, and it's kind of kludgy. You have to kind of jump back and forth, but it sounds like more of that functionality is going to start kind of getting folded in. Another thing that they announced as well is the new Sora 2 model. If you've heard anything about Sora in the news and the OpenAI app for AI video creation, is they're saying that they're making Sora 2 available to Microsoft 365 Copilot, as well as Microsoft Foundry, formerly Azure AI Foundry, to kind of just prompt and create short videos. I haven't had an opportunity to test that yet. I have had the opportunity to test some of these AI video creation tools, and it is extremely hit and miss. You will get a really great looking video based on your prompt that doesn't really have all that much kind of like AI jankiness to it or AI wonkiness to it, where, if you've seen the Will Smith AI video that came out probably 3-4 years ago of him eating spaghetti and his face just kind of melting, is AI video generation has come a long way, and Microsoft is going to be able to start taking advantage of some of that with Sora 2. Again, these are going to be short form videos, but it might just be an extra graphic that you put in your PowerPoint presentation. It might be something funny that you want to send to a team member at work, or maybe you want to recreate a scenario that you were talking about. You can type that in and kind of build that out into a short form video. Copilot mode in Edge for Business. So we talked about this in Edge in general back, I think, in July or August when we had Chris on the show. They're going to be enabling that for Edge for Business. And what this is going to allow Edge to do is, if you enable it in your organization, is it essentially allows Microsoft Edge to kind of become an AI browser. So it can do things on your behalf without you having to do it. So if you have a workflow of every day, I open up CNN.com, I click to the business section, and I look at the first 3 articles, you could tell this Copilot agent in Edge that I want you to do this for me, and then I want you to email me what the insights from those top 3 articles were, so that you don't have to go through that monotonous process every day of opening that stuff up. I haven't found too much use for this yet in my day-to-day life, but I can see that Microsoft is trying to enter the same kind of area that OpenAI is with their new web browser, as well as Perplexity with their new AI browser. Would not be surprised at all to see this come to Chrome down the line as well, or at least support for it in Chrome down the line. Though AI browsing is very, very new, and I don't think most organizations are probably going to be ready for it. Again, this is kind of one of those early access features. Take a look at it. It's Frontier program. If you're opted in, it's something worth checking out. Just checking it out may help you kind of make an informed decision on whether you want to enable it or disable it. All right, so last news story that I want to cover, and again, there's a lot here. I'm really only kind of scratching the surface on all the announcements that they made, and that's why we're going to go into more depth on future podcasts as we kind of talk through and see more of this stuff released, especially around some of those more freemium type capabilities coming to Copilot non-license holders for Microsoft 365 Copilot across apps, Outlook, etc. We'll dig deeper into that, but I wanted to talk real quick just about some of the SharePoint showcase stuff, since I know that there's a bunch of folks that listen to the show specifically that enjoy using SharePoint, OneDrive, and like kind of hearing more about those news and announcements. So Microsoft is saying that they already have over 1,800 tenants that are using the Knowledge Agent in public preview, which 1,800 tenants across millions and millions of customers seems like it's actually kind of small. But again, this is an opt-in thing. Not everyone opts in. We've talked about the Knowledge Agent previously before on the show, but this is just really kind of reiterating some of the announcements that came out earlier in September. So the Copilot and SharePoint advantage is Copilot with the Knowledge Agent is going to have the ability to kind of reason over metadata and also kind of automatically create metadata on your SharePoint libraries, which I think is a great feature. But in practice, we really need to kind of see how it works, because it could kind of create you junk metadata. But again, I would say that if you're going to play around with this feature, and I think that you should, because metadata is important, it helps improve search, it helps you find things. It also helps you tag, classify, add identity or information protection labels to documents. This is a great way to kind of start, is using this agent on kind of a select amount of sites in your environment. You can kind of see in the screenshot here how they're using the metadata and how they're processing it and adding it onto this communication site just through natural language prompting. It's also giving the ability here soon, or Copilot will soon have the ability to kind of reason over your intranet content as well. So if you have a SharePoint site out there with a lot of public information on it, this will start to tie into Copilot chat a little bit easier. It's going to be able to reason over full Office files. So right now you can kind of get the summaries of them today in SharePoint and OneDrive, but soon you're going to have the ability to kind of reason on the entire document in those document libraries. So the next thing here too is kind of the on-demand list and page creation. So the ability for you to have a conversation with Copilot and for it to automatically create you a SharePoint page. Again, this is something that I feel like got announced at Ignite last year for SharePoint pages and didn't really kind of come to be like almost kind of like that loop functionality where there was a Copilot button in loop. It worked for a little while and then they kind of pulled back on that functionality, and we're seeing it kind of added back in over time. This is going to kind of give you the ability to go into Copilot chat, reference your SharePoint agent, and then kind of make a page draft, and then kind of go into that SharePoint page itself and kind of make edits to it directly within kind of like that SharePoint interface that you're used to today. You'll also have the ability to kind of ask the SharePoint agent, hey, how many users are using the SharePoint page when were documents last accessed on it? And these are just ways that they're kind of taking some of the functionality from the Microsoft 365 Admin Center Copilot agents and tying them more into SharePoint agents overall. Now, Copilot, again, it follows the license holder. So if you don't have the access to look this stuff up on the back end, you're probably not going to have access to it here as well. This is more meant for SharePoint owners than it's meant for everyone. But still, this can kind of give you a better read on, hey, how many people are actually visiting my SharePoint site and clicking on links on a monthly or a weekly basis. And speaking of streamlining agent management and kind of just taking advantage of it in the admin center is, again, we talked about this with Agent 365 already, but we are starting to see more control added in for all agents, SharePoint inclusive as well. So if you have SharePoint built agents out there that already exist, you're going to be able to track and manage those easier directly within the Microsoft 365 Admin Center. Here in the future, you can kind of see that today under the agent view in the admin center through your reports section, but you're also going to probably likely start to see this stuff show up under that new Microsoft 365 Copilot Agents app in pane of glass in the admin center as well. So at a high level, those are some of the things that were added in. There's also updates around e-signature availability in Microsoft 365 that they talked about at Ignite, the ability to kind of promote SharePoint news posts directly using Viva Amplify if you're an organization that uses Viva or Amplify. Some updates to the FAQ web part are coming out, giving you the ability to kind of automatically create a frequently asked questions document from a page that you may already have out there on SharePoint, which I could find to be very useful, especially for organizations that are pretty SharePoint heavy and they have a lot of information out there. And maybe you don't have the time to sit down and build that out yourself. And then just again, the SharePoint admin agent has moved to kind of public preview, as well as kind of that frontier agent for SharePoint knowledge. As we see more of this stuff grow, we're going to, kind of continue to spend some time talking about it on the show, especially where we find that you and your organization may find uses for it. And we may even be able to give you some ideas on how you can employ it based on how we've been using it with different customers and using it internally ourselves. All right, that's about all I've got for today. This podcast went about an hour. Probably trim this thing down to about 40, 45 minutes. But again, thanks for the time. I'll take you to the outro. Thanks again for tuning in. If your organization is interested in Microsoft 365 or you're already using it and you need help with implementing or managing those services, you can contact Virteva by emailing us at letstalk@virteva.com or by visiting our website at www.virteva.com. As we head into the end of the year, we wanted to thank you all again for supporting the podcast. We had another great year with more than 2,000 new subscribers on our YouTube page and over 45,000 views and listens across the podcast overall. We're planning to be back in January to further unpack some more of these announcements and news that came out of Ignite and dig a little bit deeper. But before we go, I wanted to take the opportunity to wish you and your family a happy holiday wherever you may be celebrating. As always, if you made it this far and you haven't already, please don't forget to hit those like and subscribe buttons. It really helps us out. Take care and see you next year.